Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Welcome back to the big show. Well, there's a lot going on in the election. Of course, we're like 20 days away now, so less than 3 weeks away from Decision 2024. And, there's been a little bit of movement in the polls. I'm going to get you caught up on. We're going to preview Kamala Harris's interview. She's all of a sudden making herself available. Now, not doing an open press conference where she sits at a podium and there's a crowd of just a gaggle of randos in front of her popping off questions, but more than we've gotten. And so one of the speculations on that is, well, she must be desperate. Or is she confident? 800-288-9227. And yes, I'm going to have plenty of audio highlights from the debate last night between Ted Cruz and Allred. But to sort of sweeten the pot and talk about all of that, Donald Kimball's back on with Young Voices. Welcome to the big show.
Thanks so much for having me.
On my first point here, Donald, Kamala Harris stepping out. She's going to do an interview on Fox today. And then she said, or I've seen reports that she's going to sit down with Joe Rogan. Is this desperation or confidence?
I think it is leaning more towards desperation. And the reason I say that is because the Democrats played this game that kind of put them in the corner. They hid her away. They kind of played the Joe Biden in 2020 campaign strategy, and it seemed to work. But even after what was widely seen as a successful debate performance from her poll numbers didn't bounce as much maybe as they had hoped. And now with the race as tight as ever and the momentum not in her favor, she now has to do what she hasn't been doing, and that is interviews, that's media appearances. Unfortunately, the problem is it seems, at least, there's a little bit of a correlation that when she goes out and speaks more, the poll numbers don't favor her. But the problem is, in order to then recoup those poll numbers, you have to do something. And again, the easiest, biggest thing you can do is media appearances.
So what do you attribute her decline to, Donald?
I think it's that the more undecided, uninformed people actually see her, the less appealing she is. It's a lot better to say, I just don't like Donald Trump and I'm going to vote for anyone but Donald Trump, than it is to say, yes, I actually like Kamala Harris. I actually want to vote for this person. And so to me, I think that there's a little bit of that when you actually have to put your pen to the paper and vote for someone and you see who that person is, maybe the picture in your head's a little bit less enchanting than you thought.
Well, we had the big debate here in Texas between Ted Cruz, our senator, and his challenger, Allred, who's already a congressman, has a little bit of name recognition. And the Real Clear Politics average has Ted Cruz up by 4 points. It just seems odd that it could be any closer than that.
Yeah, and you remember there's been kind of this hype train around Democrats taking Texas, and there's obviously a big machine there. And so, you do see that there's efforts and momentum. But remember, this was also said in, I believe, 2020, also in 2016 and 2014, 2018. There have been these machinations. So whether or not we actually see anything, it seems a little bit less likely to me than maybe we expected. I can't remember with 100% clarity here, but I do believe in the last election that people had really thought there was going to be this chance that the polls were a lot closer than the actual results ended up being in favor of the Republicans here. So even though...
you're talking about Beto. He was Beto O'Rourke. Robert Francis O'Rourke is his real name, but he goes by Beto, so he appeals to the cool kids and the people of color. But the fantasy of Texas turning blue... we have to hear it all the time. Of course, being in Texas, we have to hear about it. But it's been a fun little anomaly because you would assume a state that is majority minority would be a pushover to be at least purple. But here we are, Donald.
Right. And I think, Texas embodies a lot of maybe the more conservative values. But you also do see trends of in particular, younger streamers, successful businesses that don't want to deal with the heavy tax burden or regulation burdens from some places like, Washington State, where I may or may not be familiar with how we are abysmally treating our businesses here. But they're all going in particular to Houston. The one really interesting trend, like I was mentioning, is streamers in particular, this kind of new career path for younger people. There's a big hub of people moving to Houston there because, again, of the tax burden not being heavy there. And so it's a great place for them. But of course, they often come from places like California. So that might be another strategy that, they're employing. But it seems like the culture of Texas is still pretty conservative and pretty strong. So whether or not they're able to leverage out youth vote, minority vote, remains to be seen. But to me, I don't see a compelling case just yet.
All right. Well, we'll see if Kamala gets tripped up in any of these upcoming interviews. And if you want to find more of Donald Kimball's work, it's at the opposite, KimballDonald.com. Thank you, Donald.
Thank you so much.
KimballDonald.com. Coming up next, audio from the campaign trail. Your opinions. Do you think Kamala Harris is going to get tripped up in her Fox interview today? What would you like to see Fox ask? And it's just going to happen in 2 hours? I think they're going to record it in 2 hours and play it back in 3 hours. What would you like to hear? What would you ask her if you were in charge? 800-288-9227. You'll hear an email response to that I already got before the show started. My thoughts on that and some audio from the campaign trail. Next, I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. A couple of interesting developments in election 2024. Kamala Harris is coming out of the basement, what started as sort of a front porch campaign, and had a little enthusiasm and was doing well and had the polls moving in her direction. Has lost a little bit of that spark. The honeymoon's over. And now that the polls are kind of slipping, and not overall nationally slipping, but it happens to be slipping in some of these early voting states. It happens to be slipping in some of these swing states, and she's coming out to do something about it. I find it fantastic that she's actually agreed to go on Fox News. You think about all of the interviews that Trump has done in an unfriendly platform, which means every interview that wasn't done on Fox News or talk radio, for the most part, is going to match what she is now finally doing for the first time. For the first time. You realize in the entirety of the last election cycle in 2020, the Democrat candidate never talked to Fox News. Wow. Okay. So you have two issues here. Is this desperation or is this confidence? Is she feeling so good about herself that she can go into Fox News and she can walk into the opposition's, the enemy camp, and not only take fire, but return fire? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. 20 days until the election. 87 days since Kamala Harris has been the nominee. No formal news conference. No going out in front of a crowd of random, press gaggle and just fielding questions for an hour or so. So this could be her biggest test. Oh, and another reminder before I take calls, 800-288-9227. What would you ask her, by the way, if you were interviewing her here in a couple hours? I'm going to be live at the State Fair on Friday. So if you're already going to be out there, come on out and say hi. Sorry, I was supposed to mention that earlier. But what would you ask her? I got a great email from Ed last night. It said, will Brett Baer, I'm sorry, he just misspelled it. Will Brett Baer ask any questions tonight about her whereabouts during the pipe bomb incident? Or maybe why did she cover up Biden's mental state? I think Brett could end the election tonight with some simple, honest questions like, where are the children? I don't know what that part's about. But that pipe bomb incident, you know what? I didn't have that in my notes. So I had to open my notes and add it because of this email I got. Are you aware of this sort of subplot, this side quest that has gone away, bizarrely gone away? I forget about it too. Dan Bongino doesn't forget about it. So I imagine Ed's an ADL, or at least something to that effect. He's probably a Dan Bongino listener. There was 2 pipe bombs that were found outside the DNC in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And then no one made anything about it. No one's been charged with it. We don't know where it came from. We don't know who it was targeted at. We don't know who dropped them off. We don't know who picked, So we go through like what the surveillance video, and Dan Bongino has done the reporting on this. It almost looks like one could come up with a crazy conspiracy theory that they were setting up a terror attack. Not that they were going to like actually let the pipe bombs go off, but they could say, oh my goodness, we found 2 pipe bombs outside the DNC. The Trump crowd's crazy. We've got to impeach him, and high crimes and misdemeanors or treason or insurrection. That was the magic word that was in the Constitution that they wanted to impeach him on. So he can't run again. But then when January 6th happened and there was some destruction at the Capitol and Ashley Babbitt got shot and there was some people acting like fools, they were like, oh, okay, well, we don't need to set them up if they're going to give us enough of a pretext to be hyperbolic anyway. And so they quietly dismantled the sort of plan B if plan A didn't work. Great question. Now, why did she cover up Biden's mental state? That's a question that Brett might actually ask. So I thought that was a good addition from Ed via email. By the way, my email, james@wbap.com. What would you like to see Kamala be asked by Fox News in her interview today? Let me throw 800-288-9227. Let me throw some of my ideas out, but you can jump in with yours. 800-288-9227. I give you the microphone. What would you ask Kamala? So let's do the abortion thing. Abortion came up in the debate last night between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. First thing, they probably spent more time on that than anything else because it's a winning one. It's a winning issue for Team Blue. 30% of the female voters under the age of 30 are single issue voters on abortion. They lock up single women, 30% of them, 1 out of 3, just on that issue alone. It is great for them. It's great for business. So do you support abortion up until the moment of birth? That's the full-blown pro-choice policy. And if she says yes, say, what about 10 seconds before it's born? What if it's in the canal and just, with mom's permission, just hit it with the ice pick, shot back its brains out and it falls out? Should that be legal? Because that's partial birth abortion. That's actually legal in some states. Tim Walz supported that in Minnesota. What about 5 minutes before it's born? What about a day before it's born? And you see like a lot of reasonable people, most people in America under those circumstances would push that date back and they would find out, well, I guess I'm not completely pro-choice. And it wouldn't destroy the entirety of Team Blue, and it really wouldn't change that many minds. But it would damper some enthusiasm. It would cause a little bit of introspection. People, when they have to think about things in nuance, it's really hard to be sensational and bombastic and radical about it. That's why you see the only radical people, the people putting bumper stickers on their car, is the 11% of America that thinks that all abortion should be legal at all times up until the moment of birth, even partial birth abortion. And only 9% of Americans think life begins at fertilization, conception. The rest of us, the 81% of America that's in the gray area, we don't put bumper stickers on our car. You would get to some of those people, though. I think the other great question to ask would be, economically speaking, on policy, how are you different than a Marxist? I would ask her how she describes what is her economic philosophy. Because I think Trump is actually some sort of protectionist Keynesian. You've heard me say I'm an Austrian economist. Art Laffer is a supply side economist. Ronald Reagan, supply side economics ruled the day for him as well. I like to joke that Mick Jagger is also a Keynesian economist. He said it in an interview on Wayne's World, so that makes it official. But you've never heard this. There's no such thing. She says, I would create an opportunity economy. Well, that's not a thing, okay? You just made up an adjective to put in front of it, but that's not a school of thought. There's no textbooks written on it. There's no one else that describes it like that. So ask her a real question. What would you ask? 800-288-9227. We're going to find out right after the James Show on Fox tonight. And look, it's going to be a short interview, but there is a chance something awesome will happen. I will watch it. If anything is of note, it will be on the show tomorrow. You can bet that. Coming up next, you're going to hear from RT Trevino in the oil patch about all these policies that are being debated at the state and federal level. How will they affect your energy prices? Find out in 8 minutes on the James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What do you want to see? What would you like to see Kamala Harris be asked? She's going to be interviewed by Fox News later today. There's rumors that she's going to be on the Joe Rogan show pretty soon. So that podcast, usually they talk for like a couple hours. I think that's the bigger one than the Fox one tonight. The Fox News interview. I expect that to be 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. If we can get 20 minutes out of her, that would be amazing. But Joe Rogan, her having to speak off the cuff for 2 hours. Oh, there's no way you can prep for that. You're actually going to have to speak from your own thoughts at some point. I think that would be huge. What would you like to see asked? And then coming up, I'm also soon you're going to hear some updates, audio updates from or highlights, I should say, from the Cruz Allred debate last night. But right now, we're going to talk to RT Trevino back on the James Show, calling in from the oil patch. And that is, few industries have to watch politics as much as the oil patch. I mean, is this just an additional level of stress for you guys?
It definitely adds more awareness to everything that we're up to, yes. I won't use the word stress because I love this industry, and if it's something you love, it's not stressful, right?
Okay, well, we've recently seen gas prices dip. Explain yourself.
Yes, I hope everybody's enjoying the lower gas prices. I know I am. And what it is right now, James, and thanks again for having me on, it's a combination of several factors. The two important ones are, one, if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we took a dip in the price of oil. And so we are just now starting to see the effects of those lower prices of oil 2 weeks ago now at the pump. So we're seeing those effects. We usually see those delays about 2 weeks later on a normal. The other thing that's really driving these lower gas prices is that Florida refineries and really more importantly Gulf Coast refineries are coming back online after two horrific hurricanes. So we've definitely got more supply right now than we do the demand. So really we're just getting more gasoline out there, just like we're continuing to produce more oil than any other country in the world right now.
So how closely are y'all watching the elections for what happens with leases on federal lands? Do y'all expect a big change there?
You know, I think that if obviously if we get President Trump back in office, we could definitely see some very positive things on some federal lands from the Bureau of Land Management. We have tremendous reserves underneath there. And with modern technology and the rules and regulations that we follow on a daily basis, there really should be no issue on why we should be able to continue to drill and produce more American oil from these lands across America.
Well, when people on Team Blue complain that the oil industry is subsidized and we need to end oil subsidies, are they normally talking about tax breaks and tax credits? Because I try and find what subsidy programs we have out there, and it's not the same thing. Like when you buy an electric car, there's a subsidy, but what are they talking about?
Yes, great question, James. When people are talking about stop subsidizing the oil and gas industry, what they're technically talking about is stop giving the tax deductions that go into oil and gas. So anytime anybody that's listening may want to invest directly into oil and gas, they actually get a tax deduction against their W-2 and or ancillary income every year. And that is completely different than a subsidy whenever somebody goes and buys an electric car or gets solar panels on their house. The government physically gives them money in a subsidy, while a tax deduction means we're just getting a tax deduction every year on these things.
Well, I see, the reason I'm asking about it is there's not some program out there where they're trying to subsidize something, like if you can get on some chain of islands or if you can clean up a bat habitat, they'll give you a subsidy. Something there's no program where they actually give you money.
No, there's no program like that anywhere that the government gives us money for producing American oil.
All right, just wanted to clear that up. All right, So let me ask you, what's going on at the oil patch that the average person listening in North Texas doesn't know about?
Man, right now, really the thing that I think the average American doesn't know about is that these men and women that are out there in the oil patch are working hard for them 24/7, James. They're out there producing oil, maintaining what oil we have, because we are not drilling like we used to. I don't know if anybody heard President Trump earlier today on Fox News himself, but the best way for us to fight inflation is to drill, baby, drill. But as us at Pecos Country Operating like to say, produce, baby, produce. And as we can continue to produce more oil in America, not only will we fight inflation, but we'll bring inflation down. So in getting back full circle, all these men and women that are in the oil patch, They're fighting to bring inflation down every day.
RT, what is the record for the deepest hole you've drilled?
Oh, my goodness. We have been a part of some wonderful wells, but, in all the majors out there, just continue with modern technology for us to drill deeper and deeper wells and produce more oil here in America. And as I mentioned earlier, much more safer and much more ecologically friendly than ever before.
All right, there he is, RT Trevino, Pecos Oil and Gas. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, James.
All right, we heard from the oil patch. I want to hear from you, 800-288-9227, because we're going to transition here to highlights from the Cruz Allred debate last night. You heard it on WBAP, or maybe you watched it on our news partner, WFAA. All right, maybe you didn't. No worries. I got you covered. I'll play you the highlights next. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I could juggle either the states or the national election scene right now, because it's not really that different. We have the same top issues in the debate that was heard last night here on WBAP or seen on our news partner, WFAA. Same big issues. They kicked off the debate with what is, for many people, the most important issue in the history of ever, abortion. Okay, got it. They stayed on it for a good, 6 minutes. Hang on. How long is this? Yeah. This clip is 7 minutes into the debate. Oh, my God. Yeah, 7 minutes, 6 minutes and 42 seconds into the debate. They're still talking about abortion. This will be the third time they asked Ted Cruz if he supports exceptions for rape and incest. Now, the fact that he's not giving a straight answer means he's probably giving an answer that would be unpopular with some people listening, and he'd rather not go on the record. And so he's doing the classic politician dodge. Can't really blame him. It's a touchy issue that's not going to help him if he just gives him the ammo of a direct answer. But this is how intent they are getting to the bottom of this mystery.
Senator, I want to give you 60 seconds, too. I want to ask you again, why is this an issue you want to address about saying whether you support or oppose exceptions like rape or incest?
Jason, I'm curious. Why do you keep asking me that? But yet, hold on a second. I've asked Congressman Allred twice about his voting record and the fact that he voted to strike down Texas's parental notification law and parental consent law. You haven't asked him about it.
And then he keeps going on and on and on. He never answers the question, though. That's a toughie. When we have this discussion, I was beating up the other side in a previous segment, but on this side, if you believe, like philosophically speaking, life begins when that egg gets fertilized, then you would be against IVF. You would think destroying those undeveloped embryos is akin to murder. That's something people need to know. So that's something people would base their vote on. You got to be very careful with that issue, because that is not very good for some voters on Team Red or Team Blue. They feel very strongly about that. It's best to avoid that altogether. So what do? Spend 7 minutes on it. Now, if you think this is going to be a segment where I bash WFAA for being a bunch of partisan hacks, that is not about to happen. I think they did a great job. I think the moderators did a great job. Now, they did push Cruz here, but they also pushed back on Colin Allred on a couple things. On the border wall, they pushed back on him and had to repeat the questions about whether or not he'll allow trans athletes in women's sports. So, it started off with me questioning, like, is it going to be another one of these? No. Actually, me, studio audience, we all agree. WFAA. Good job. So, yeah, let's go to that next big topic. What's up with the border wall? Allred, where do you stand on that?
Let me be very clear. I believe in physical barriers as part of a comprehensive strategy to secure the border.
All right. Now, the reason why this is such an issue, if you go to the website that Ted Cruz set up, allredfacts.com, you can follow the link through to find he didn't always feel that way about a border wall. In fact, he used to call it racist. So here is, you can go find this on YouTube as well. Colin Allred calling it racist.
And I want to really briefly talk about this racist wall, because the symbol of this country cannot be a fence with a barbed wire on top of it. It has to remain the Statue of Liberty. And I'll tell you what, if they build that wall, my generation will be the one that tears it down. Because we will not have this in this country. We will not have these policies. We're not going to waste billions of our dollars on a racist campaign promise, and we're not going to turn the symbol of this country into a wall with barbed wire on top of it.
There. Done. Settled. You call it racist, and it wasn't an accident because he said it twice. And he said, if y'all build that racist wall, we'll tear it down. Doesn't sound like he was in favor of it then. Next, he was asked about inflation, high cost of groceries, and he kind of went into the I was raised in a middle-class household bit.
But let's talk about inflation, because, I was raised by a single mom who's a public school teacher in a state where we don't pay our teachers enough. And so I know what it's like to go through the grocery store line and swipe your debit card and just say a little prayer and hope that this week you can afford it.
So that does sound kind of like, and Ted Cruz was right to bring it up. It sounds like, I was raised in a middle-class household when asked about inflation. That's not what I thought of, though. I'm the kind of psycho that remembers, wait a second. Colin Allred also spoke at the DNC, and didn't he do that swipe card prayer thing then?
I was raised by a single mom. Mom was a public school teacher who often worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. So when we talk about lowering costs, I think about the times when we went to the grocery store when I was growing up and swiped the debit card and said a little prayer.
Ooh.
But my mom and my community in Texas gave me a chance to chase my version.
Yeah. Damn, I'm good. Damn. That's a good host right there. Y'all should be a little more. Thank you. No, it's even better. Come on. That's almost Rain Man level memory. Thank you. All right. Back to the debate. The trans issue came up. We never got a resolved issue answer on this from Colin Allred. I'll tell you what it sounded. I can show you what it sounded like. But
where do you stand on transgender athletes in women's sports?
Well, let's be very clear. Let's be very clear about what's happening in this campaign. This is, you don't have to be a former NFL linebacker to recognize a Hail Mary when you see one. This is a desperate, last-second attempt by Senator Cruz to distract you, because he can't defend his own record.
All right, and then he goes off on something else. So he didn't answer. See, just like Cruz dodged. Here comes the credit. They come back. WFAA, God bless them. They actually came back to this one.
And if you can clearly outline where you stand on transgender in women's sports.
Well, listen, as I said, I don't support boys playing girls' sports, but let's be clear about the Equality Act.
Ooh, I don't support boys playing in girls' sports, but you voted for it. You've supported it legislatively if you go to allredfacts.com. And actually, Ted Cruz had this part memorized. There was like 3 different bills or motions or letters or whatever that he signed off on that did allow trans women in women's sports. Now, he said, I'm not going to allow boys in women's sports, but is that a semantic? Is that a rhetorical sleight of hand? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I was really happy to see what a great job our friends over at WFAA did with that debate. So well done, guys. Your thoughts, 800-288-9227. I do have more audio highlights and your calls on who you think won the debate. But right now, I've got to do one of those keywords. There's a bunch of people listening right now that would like to go see Motley Crue at Dolby Live at Park MGM. It's a trip to Vegas. Your keyword for another entry to win the contest, the word Lee. I guess like Robert E. Lee? Oh, no, the drummer, Tommy Lee. That's right. I'm kidding. I knew it was Tommy Lee. But text LEE to 95819. 95819 for another entry to win the trip to Vegas to see Motley Crue, Dolby Live at Park MGM. I'm going to give you another cue to text in before 5 p.m., before the end of the James Show today, so stick right here. Prizes provided by Big Machine Rock and Live Nation. Full contest rules, WBAP.com. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. We are now just 20 measly days away from the election. Now, it's been 87 days since Kamala has been the assumed nominee. Still no formal news conference, but we are getting a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, hopefully, with a Fox News interview. This will be the first interview that you've seen of her from a non-friendly outfit. And they're not going to be hitting her with like a paintball gun or, throwing double dare slime at her or anything. This is just going to be the first one that's not on Team Blue for her. So this could be a very interesting afternoon we have. It'll happen right after the James Show. I know you're probably busy and can't sit down to watch it. I will. I'll record it. If there's anything of note that I think you'll be interested in, you can almost guarantee to hear it on the show tomorrow. Aaron Pomerantz is on again with Young Voices. Now, I'm going to ask a couple questions here of the callers. I'm going to ask them of you, too. Right. Number one, what would you like to see Kamala be asked by Fox News tonight? 800-288-9227 if you're a caller, or if you're Aaron, you could just answer now.
I'd like them to ask her some concrete questions about policy, and I'd like them to get some clarification from her on some of the things she's said that have been, shall we say, contradicted even by her own campaign materials, so things like fracking and stuff like that. I would also love to see them just not give her a hostile interview. I don't want them to be jerks to her. I think, if anything, that would massively backfire. But I would like to see a tough interview given to her.
So when you want to talk policy, are you more interested in going after the social policy or the economic policy?
I think both. I think that, the rhetoric seems to be around we can't afford 4 more years of this. I forget who it was who said that, but it's like she's part of the Biden office. She's part of the Biden administration. She can't claim that she's not in some way connected to the past 4 years, and Americans don't seem to feel that they're better off. So if she wants to make the case that she is going to be somehow different from Joe Biden, she needs to have some really concrete answers as to why. And the Biden campaign has argument, or not campaign, the Biden administration has had arguments it could have made. I'm not saying I would have agreed with those arguments, but it did an abysmal job of defending his record, or even trying to defend his record on economic issues. All it did was basically say, this is fine. It's actually not as bad as everyone can see that it is. So unless Kamala makes it very clear that she is not going to continue Biden's policies, and she can say how that's going to look, not just say, I'll be different, I think that's a problem for her, and I think that's going to be a problem for her on Election Day, too. And when it comes to the social issues as well, especially on issues like school choice, she has a chance to potentially clarify some of the accusations being made against her on issues like parents' rights, etc., abortion, stuff like that. And she has to tread really carefully with those issues, but right now she's not even treading. She's just avoiding the topic. I mean, Time Magazine, she's the first candidate to not give an interview to Time Magazine, for crying out loud, whereas Donald Trump seems to have given them more than they ever wanted. So she really needs to give some answers right now.
So why is she going to Fox? There's 2 theories. She's doing this out of desperation. She's slipping in the polls and she needs to shore up some support among voters she doesn't usually fish for. Or maybe she's just confident and she's not scared to go into the lion's den and face him down. I
think it's sort of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I wouldn't say that she's desperate. She is leading Trump still in several polls. But polls are really, really hard to interpret the last few years. And what is a good representative poll has really become a hotly debated topic. And she's certainly not beating Trump outside the margin of error or beyond a shadow of a doubt. So she's probably getting a little bit scared. I think she's also kind of hoping that by going on Fox News, she can show a side of herself to potential Trump voters, if there are any potential, undecided voters among them. I think she's hoping she can kind of humanize herself to them and show that she's not afraid to go into the lion's den. And I think by doing that, if she performs well, and who knows how she'll perform, but if she performs well, I think that would actually be a real problem for Trump, because if she performs well, she then has another chance to say, hey, why won't you debate me? We're 20 days away. Why won't you debate? Are you scared? And when you poke Trump like that, he tends to do things that don't make him look very good. And I think that might be something they're going for here.
Yeah, irritable Trump could be a problem. But Kamala might not survive this interview. I think she will, Aaron. But I appreciate you coming on the show again. Where do they find you outside of the James Show?
You can find me on Twitter at apom92, and you can find me on the Young Voices website.
Thank you very much, Aaron Pomerantz. Now, right now, Kamala Harris is speaking at Washington Crossing Pennsylvania. This is ahead of her interview on Fox News tonight. I wanted to just give you a little clip of this. Now, she's on the teleprompter. She's not speaking off the cuff or answering a question. So this is built into the script, baked into the cake sass right here.
In a typical election year, you all being here with me might be a bit surprising, dare I say unusual. But not in this election. Not in this election.
Stop it. Isn't that kind of almost sociopathic when you go from, no, seriously. Just like a drop of a hat right there. And I'm not saying she's a psychopath. I'm just saying it looks very performative. How about that? I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. That was performative. She's putting on a show on a stage behind a podium. 800-288-9227. I'd like to hear if you were able to say, hey, Brett Baer, here's what you need to ask her. What would you tell her? What would you tell him? What do you want her to be asked at the Fox News interview this afternoon? So 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'll talk to you about that. And you're going to hear a fact check of some of the claims made in last night's Senate debate with Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. So a lot of reasons to keep it right here on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Now, it's not that unusual when you have a big Senate seat up for grabs the same time a presidential election is being held. You know, it's an on year, not an off year. That the big topics at the federal level are going to match the big topics at the state level. However, that's more true in a border state than it is for the rest of the country because, you know, these border issues that are really moving the needle at the federal level, they also really move the needle for guys like us, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Florida. So it's not a surprise that these issues overlap so much. But what we do know from this is that if you have them overlap this much, it's winner take all. If Trump's going to win the presidency, you can almost guarantee Cruz is going to keep his Senate seat and vice versa. However, you look and you say, well, hang on a second. So the scenario by which Colin Allred wins is by Trump losing? Well, not necessarily. It's not going to be that cut and dry because the Trump-Kamala Harris race is a lot closer than the Cruz-Allred race. Now, if you want to divvy it out, how is Trump and Kamala doing in Texas? It's not really that different. But it's wild that you have a 50-50 Senate as it stands right now. And really, how much leans on Texas right now? That's pretty amazing stuff. Because the disappointing part about being in such a deep red state is you feel like your vote doesn't really matter. We were going to go to red anyway. But this time, you really have some incentive to get out to the polls because every Senate seat matters. Every Senate seat, when it's a 50-50 tie, is the difference between controlling the Senate or not. And look, you want to control the Senate because if Trump wins, but he doesn't control the Senate, he's not going to be able to get a whole lot of legislation through. If Kamala Harris wins and they control the Senate, she is going to be able to get a lot of legislation through. Now, if Trump wins and the Republicans gain control of the Senate, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of legislation to get through, but that's where you cross your fingers and you actually have a fighting chance at things moving your way. We go down to Houston. I found a great fact check. It's about 3 minutes, so I'm going to play it after we talk to Nancy in Waco. But I am so heartened by what I see with our local TV and radio stations compared with the national press. It's almost like they demonstrate, like I know the people reporting in most of these TV stations are dedicated Team Blue. How come they can hide it so well, but they can't hide it so well at MSNBC and CNN, and really on the ABC Evening News and the CBS Evening News, NBC Evening News? They do such a better job at these local stations, keeping it just not being a partisan hack. Even though I know it's coming from a lefty perspective, you're really going to like the fact check. But I think you're going to like Nancy in Waco more. Nancy in Waco, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think?
Well, my question for her would be more like, what is it about America that she just hates? that she is trying to turn everything that's positive into a negative.
Well, I could answer that for you. For one thing, you know, the racism, the slavery, the Jim Crow, the segregation, the historical disenfranchisement of women and not letting them vote. On top of that, we're the big contributor to climate change. We're destroying the planet. We oppress the poor. We have evil capitalism, not good socialism. We don't have universal health care. We don't have electric choo-choo trains that can take us around for free at the government expense. There's a whole, they give you a list of grievances why they hate this country so much. I don't know why anybody's surprised.
But see, you say they. I'm talking about her specifically because I do not believe that she feels that way about everything. I don't believe that she really believes in gender reaffirming for 5-year-olds. I mean, is she willing to watch one of those surgeries? Does she want? I don't believe. I don't believe
any of them do. I don't believe any of them could sit there and watch one of those surgeries. You're bringing up a good point. And to be fair, I don't think Colin Allred is either. What I saw in Colin Allred is not some ideologue, some Marxist crusader, some guy who's trying to bring about communism or social. He's some guy that he is of midwit, but he's smart enough to know that if I memorize what my handlers tell me, I get to be a congressman. Hell, I might even get to be a senator. And that's actually a good thing to know. He's not dedicated to these terrible ideas, and he'd be willing to swing with whatever political helps his political fortunes. That means we, the people, can actually have more of an influence on someone like him than a real ideologue like a Bernie Sanders. And yeah, you're right. Kamala Harris, probably the same thing, Nancy.
Well, watching that debate, I mean, here's Cruz with so much passion about everything that he knew, and then there's Mr. Allred standing there with no passion in his voice or in his face. All he did was look like he was getting beaten up, and he looked like a liar. That's all I can say about him.
What I saw was a guy that was on in that arena at that level for the first time, and he was just kind of stunned. It's like for the first time you go to the Super Bowl versus the fifth time you go to the Super Bowl. Yeah. But what I do think is if Colin Allred wants to stick with it and play his cards right, he may not look like such a deer in headlights in future debates. That guy might have a political future. And if he's going to be, you know, if we have to have a Democrat coming from this district over here, I'm glad it's him over some of the other Democrat options, Nancy.
But yeah, he might be able to be pulled one way or the other, but I just don't believe they would actually have to convince me on a personal basis that they believe any of the crap that they're throwing out there.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Nancy in Waco, thank you very much for calling. If you want to be next, 800-288-9227. Let me play this fact check from KHOU in Houston on the debate last night.
It was at times a feisty debate. Both men accused the other of lying about their own records. Let's start with Congressman Allred talking about the issue of abortion.
Look into the camera and talk to Amanda Zarowski, who's watching right now, and explain to her why it's perfectly reasonable that because she had a complication in her pregnancy and was denied care so long that she may never be able to have children of her own. Or to the 26,000 Texas women who've been forced to give birth to their rapist child under this law that you called perfectly reasonable. It's not. This is not freedom.
Our source is the Journal of the American Medical Association, or JAMA. Its survey estimated Texas saw 26,313 rape-related pregnancies during the 16 months after the state outlawed all abortions. But this needs context, and the true number could be different. Researchers noted that such, quote, highly stigmatized experiences are difficult to capture accurately in surveys. Next, Senator Cruz attacked Allred and the defund the police movement.
Let me tell you what a disaster defunding the police had been. The defund the police movement started in 2019. From 2019 to 2023, let me tell you what happened to the murder rate. In Houston, it went up 29%.
Our source here is FBI crime data. The numbers show 281 murders in Houston in 2019. 4 years later, in 2023, 343 people were killed. Cruz's claim is mostly true, but does need context. It's a 22% increase, not 29%. And it's worth noting several factors, including the pandemic, have been cited as causes of a spike in violent crime and homicides. Next, Representative Allred attacked Cruz on the child tax credit.
One of those is the child tax credit. For 6 months, it was in place, and it helped us lift millions of Texas kids out of food insecurity. You know, the North Texas Food Bank told me that they could track when the child tax credit hit folks' bank accounts because need for their services would go down. We wanted to extend that. We thought it was the right thing to do, to lift kids out of food insecurity. But Senator Cruz opposed it. When I'm in the Senate, I'll bring back the child tax credit.
We looked up Cruz's voting record. HB 7024 was a bill to make improvements to the child tax credit. Cruz and Texas's other senator, John Cornyn, both voted against it, so we can verify Allred's claim is true. Finally, Cruz hit Allred on an issue central to Texas, energy.
It's true. He does claim he supports LNG, but when it came time to vote, there was a vote in the House of Representatives. Do you support Joe Biden's ban on new permits on LNG? And Congressman Allred voted with Joe Biden. He voted against Texas jobs.
For this, we looked up Allred's voting record. Allred voted no, along with 199 other House Democrats, on a bill to unlock domestic LNG potential. That vote was on February 15th. A few months later, though, in May of this year, Allred penned an op-ed in the Houston Chronicle, seemingly switching positions, calling on President Biden to end the pause on permitting new liquefied natural gas projects. So Cruz's claim here is true.
And we have a lot more fact checks up on our website from last night's debate, up on KHOU.com right now.
All right. Thank you, KHOU, for their fact check. Your thoughts? You'll hear from a legal immigration firm on their reaction to the debate next, but I also want to hear from you. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You heard what I think. I heard what you think. What does a guy from the RNC think about what he heard in the recent debate? We had the Ted Cruz Colin Allred debate last night. We have the Kamala Harris interview that's being recorded right now that's going to be played this evening. And right now, the polls are kind of moving in his favor, so don't be surprised if Tommy Pickett is a little giddy on the James Show compared to his normal visits. Hey there, Tommy. Things looking pretty good in RNC land these days?
They are indeed. They are indeed. We're not taking that for granted, but we definitely have the momentum for sure.
Well, as a guy who speaks for Team R, what would you like to see Kamala Harris being asked in her interview that's being recorded as we speak?
Well, I'd like to see her ask some more questions about if she'd do anything differently than Joe Biden. She already said nothing comes to mind, but I think it's important that we drill down into some specifics about what exactly that means. Would she have spent $1.9 trillion? I mean, she voted for it, but would she have spent it again? Would she have actually stood by that vote? Would she have done anything differently on the border? I think she really needs to explain her role in all these different positions and actions that Biden and Harris have taken that have hurt the American people. So I think we need more details on exactly what she means when she says she wouldn't have done anything differently, because I think that's a warning sign for the American people.
Well, Tommy, if things go wrong here, there's the potential for this Fox News interview to actually have some consequences. But even if it is a bad interview, do you think it'll be reported in the outside world? Do you think this could really have a negative impact?
Well, I think actually if you look at some of her decline in the polls, as President Trump said just the other day, it's actually linked to the fact that she's been doing these interviews. The more people see of her, the more it seems like they don't like her. And I think this is going to be part of that pattern. So we'll see what the mainstream media actually covers from this interview. They generally try to run cover for Kamala Harris, but I think we need some follow-up questions to these questions. I mean, she's asked these things like, why do you want to ban fracking? And she insists she doesn't anymore. But she's never asked the follow-up question of why she opposed fracking for decades. Why all of a sudden, a couple months ago, she all of a sudden magically changed her position. I hope we get those follow-up questions. And I think this is part of the pattern. When the American people see her actually trying to defend her failed record, they realize that she shouldn't be president of the United States.
But do you trust Bret Baier? He's not the most ideologically strident conservative over at Fox News. Is he the right guy to hold her to account?
Well, I hope so. We'll see actually what comes out of the interview. She needs to be held to account regardless, and we're going to keep on applying the pressure as appropriate from our end here with making sure we have those receipts and making sure people have the facts. Ultimately, though, all these interviews she's done as she's declined in the polls haven't been from hostile interviewers. They've been from interviewers that openly support her. For example, MSNBC, The View, and it's been in these interviews where she's said things like she would do nothing differently than Joe Biden, where she says the American dream is no longer attainable on her watch. So Kamala Harris has been saying these things with friendly interviewers, and I think it just goes to the fact that she's unable to answer these questions. She has no answer, she has a failed record, and she has no vision to get us out of the crises that she's helped create.
All right, Tommy Pickett, how can they help out the cause at the RNC?
Well, go to DonaldJTrump.com. You'll get all the facts and figures there. Also be able to donate if you're able to. I know things are tough in this economy, but every little bit helps.
And did I see you on TV or doing other interviews? I know I don't have exclusive access to Tommy Pigott, but sometimes I do interviews with people and then I see you turn up on bigger channels and I'm like, hey, at least you spent the time to talk to me.
Well, I do when I can. It's I do go some other places, but always a pleasure to talk to you. So always happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Tommy Pigott. And with that, my favorite parody song still standing from election season, the Kamala Harris Border Czar.
From the wackos on the left to the MAGAs on the right, they know I'm beating Kamala. This race won't even be tied. Her policies are nutso. She's out her goddamn mind. She just repeats the same thing, regurgitating her lines. She thinks that immigration without paperwork is good. Clearly not too much power underneath Kamala's hood. Borders are, it's what you are. Borders are. Cackling Kamala, you're dumb. Mass inflation imminent if she weasels herself in. If that don't sound like fun to you, then you better help me win. I promise I'll secure you, you'll be in better hands. It'd be a flippin' free-for-all with what Kamala plans. Borders are, it's what you are. Borders are. Laugh it up, Kamala. This lady, she's cackling crazy.
Love that one. How good are the people that make those things? All right, just to check the roadmap here, we are 20 days away from Decision 2024. We're 20 days away from the election. 87 days since Kamala's been the nominee. No formal news conference. We're getting a step in the right direction with the interview on Fox News and the rumors that she will be interviewed on the Joe Rogan show, which if the Fox News isn't much of a challenge, having a 2-hour unscripted chat with Joe Rogan, that might be a big hurdle that could undo her. And we're going to be live at the State Fair this Friday. The James Show will be live from 2 to 5. I don't know where I'm going to be at, but just listen up. I'll tell you. And you can come by and say hi. I would love to see you. If you have any comments, questions, your thoughts, what you would like to see in this interview, 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Or look, I'm going to tell you what's coming up next. And if you already have some hot sports opinions on that, you can call in for that as well. I see these reports and it sounds like it can't be true, or I'm not getting the full story. So I'm somewhat hesitant to report on this, but a local TV station had a report out that says Fort Worth, our neighbors just right over there, Fort Worth has 900 untested rape kits. 900. Now, I don't know if there's an excuse for this, and you're like, well, why could there be an excuse for an untested rape kit? Well, what if they did a rape kit on a girl and the guy confessed to the crime? Do they need to spend the taxpayer money to go run that through the lab when he already admitted to it? No. So is that what we're dealing with here? Or are we dealing with the backlog? Because the reporting was kind of fuzzy and never even explored the fact that there could be such thing as a legitimate one. Like if they did a rape kit on the guy that on a rape victim, but the guy ended up getting shot and killed, or like when they were trying to arrest him, did the cops kill him? I mean, do we really need to go process all that? So is there a legit explanation for this? Because that is absolutely horrifying to me. And look, I am the father of 2 young girls, and that should horrify you more. You don't have to be a father of anything. You don't even have to have a dog for this to scare the crap out of you. Do we really have just 900 rapes that are going with no attempt at justice for these people? Criminal justice? What the heck? Yeah, I know that sounds like a little too much. So I'm going to go over it with you and what I found coming up next on the James Show. 800-288-9227. I have a feeling someone's going to call in that knows a little bit more about this and blow this whole thing wide open and probably make me feel better about the situation. No, here's where you're wrong, Parker. It really is all this other stuff. But you'll hear the story coming up on the James Show. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP. Now on FM at 93.3.